Hey y'all, apologies, things are a little messy here, if things are a little, kind of chaotic. I'm in the middle of moving to a new, shooting set, and I just got my sort of, video work desk, set up. Got a whole new thing working here. The Dark Souls video is actually going to be the last video you see in the old box set. I'm setting up something new, and we're just in the process of moving. So, again, that's another reason why this video is so late. Like I mentioned on the Coliseum, I've been meaning to get this Patreon exclusive out for a little while now, but shit's just been chaotic. But yeah, I saw the new Beavis and Butthead movie here recently, and I know it's a stupid thing to do a Patreon exclusive on, but, I've always had weird taste in movies. I do love the original Beavis and Butthead series. I even liked the reboot series they did back in the early 2010s, I want to say. When was that? I'll flash it up here if I have the energy to look it up. But even the reboot series, given what they were working with, given the environment at the time, I thought it was okay. Beavis and Butthead is kind of a simple formula. As long as you don't deviate from, what makes Beavis and Butthead work, it can usually work. With the exception of, reviewing reality TV instead of music videos, that was probably that show's biggest mistake. But outside of that, it kept it simple, it kept it straight, and, it was good for what it was. And there have been talks of Mike Judge renewing the show in certain forms and in certain ways. And I feel like as a result of that, we actually got, and is, something to help sell people on Paramount Plus, Paramount's new streaming service and everything. They talked Mike into making another Beavis and Butthead movie after all these years, man. The farther and farther in time we go, and the more America changes and the more society changes, it's like, I don't know, Beavis and Butthead kind of, I said you can put them in any environment, but only if you don't fuck with them that much. And the thing is, Beavis and Butthead they were a critique of Generation X. They were a critique of, the grunge era and the 90s and just the disillusioned, the burnouts, just, that 90s sense of nothing fucking matters and everything is dumb. That sort of 90s cynicism. They were sort of a reflection of that. The characters of Beavis and Butthead, the stupid idiot teenagers the single-minded morons, I mean, that never goes away no matter what era you're in. But, the more times change, the harder it is to make Beavis and Butthead work in that environment. And when I heard they were doing another movie, I figured, okay, maybe as a movie, this can work out okay. Maybe it'll be fine. And overall, after seeing Beavis and Butthead do the universe, well, I have thoughts. I mean, the first big thing I gotta throw on the table here, the movie's biggest noticeable feature, and the thing that took me out of it the most, was just, man, the animation for this one, so cheap. It is so cheap and ugly looking, and, you can argue the original MTV show, even that animation wasn't great, especially in the early days, like the early Beavis and Butthead, like stuff like Frog Baseball and like the really early Beavis and Butthead. Those are pretty rough looking, but I mean, there was at least a reasonable excuse behind that. Back then, MTV didn't have money to throw at something like Beavis and Butthead. And, the earlier episodes were basically just Mike Judge getting his foot through the door, and, they didn't have money they could spend on making it look good. And even as those early shows, even as Beavis and Butthead moved on throughout the seasons, the animation did get better. It got to a point where it was like, okay, acceptable for what it was. You know, they eventually got to a decent level. Even if the animation was cheap, it at least looked okay. This movie just looks like half-assed, dude. There are moments where it almost looks like it was made on Flash. Like, really, some of these animations are just really bad. Every character has these huge black outlines, and there's, like, no shading on anything. There's no real... Like, everything looks flat. Everything looks unaccentuated, and just... I don't know, it almost looks like, remember back in like the early 2000s when, you know, certain like PlayStation 2 games in particular would use the cell shading model for like games and animations and whatnot. Yeah, it almost looks like they tried to do that on like Beavis and Butthead, though. I don't know, it really looks like... See, here's the thing. These days, Paramount could have thrown the money to make this look good. And, you know, even the Beavis and Butthead movie, the animation on that is, you know, even though it's Beavis and Butthead and the style itself isn't very flattering, there are moments in the Beavis and Butthead movie or Beavis and Butthead Do America, where, man, the animation is really great. There are certain shots and certain aspects where, yeah, you can tell they put the hard work in. Granted, that was hand-drawn animation versus, you know, digital animation, but, you know, you can almost say that doesn't merit the excuse. It's digital animation. It's not as hard to make good-looking animation as it was back in the day. But no, man, this animation looks cheap, and not just in like models or environments too. Anytime they have to do like a movement in this movie looks weird. It's particularly in the car chase sequence where you see, you know, buildings kind of disappear and kind of zoom into the foreground in the back windows. Look in the back windows, like literally the buildings pop in. Like they literally pop in and they just disappear out of nowhere. God, this thing was this thing literally animated on a PS2? I have to ask because like, yeah, it's not pretty. This might be the ugliest Beavis and Butthead has looked since those super early cartoon days, you know? This is the ugliest they've looked since Frog Baseball. And given that Paramount, I mean, Beavis and Butthead probably isn't the sweetest cherry they got, but they're one of the reasons they're one of the reasons they are where they are. I'd figure they would be able to spare a few more bucks for something like this, you know? It's weird in this movie in particular because they don't feel like they're a part of their own world. I mean, granted, this movie is about traveling through dimensions and whatnot. But the thing is, they look so alien. Like, Beavis and Butthead, every other human character model feels too realistic and too just like bluntly human. Like they don't have any real, you know, Beavis and Butthead, even the other characters in Beavis and Butthead's world, Beavis and Butthead are weird looking guys and they're meant to be that way. But even the other characters in Beavis and Butthead had that sort of stylized caricature nature to them, you know, guys like Buzzcut and the principal, you know, like they also looked weird, but you know, they looked like they were part of the same world. They were equal parts of a weird world. In this cartoon, Beavis and Butthead are just in there with normal ass looking people, and it looks really strange. It's like when Mario was walking around New Donk City and there were just like regular people there. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing when Beavis and freaking Butthead are standing next to normal people and no one else looks like that. Yeah, it just kind of, I don't know, it breaks the illusion that we're watching a Beavis and Butthead movie. And to add to that, like none of the other Beavis and Butthead characters really make much of an appearance here. Again, no Buzzcut, no Stewart, no Todd, no Mr. Anderson, even a Beavis and Butthead movie without Mr. freaking Anderson. Come on! Beavis and Butthead accidentally fucking with Mr. Anderson was like one of the best parts of Beavis and Butthead Do America. You couldn't have even thrown in just like a quick little throwaway fucking cameo, like nothing. Again, it adds to the whole it's Beavis and Butthead in name only kind of feel to this movie. And from a pure aesthetic perspective, this movie it just looks ugly, you know? Even some of the nicer effects they throw in here and there, I don't know, they're nice looking, I guess, particularly when they go through the time warp and such, but I don't know, the nicer effects just clash that much more against the Beavis and Butthead style. It just feels like it doesn't work, you know? This movie, I think it'll be a small gripe for most folks who tune into this, but yeah, it ain't very pretty. It ain't a good looking movie. I will certainly knock off points for that. I don't know, and that just speaks to the whole sort of lack of ambition this title has just in general. Like this, I don't know, it just feels like they really didn't care about this one. Like not a lot of thought or real effort went into this. It feels very almost obligated, I guess. You know, for example, the movie is called Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe, you know? Meant to imply like a sequel to Beavis and Butthead Do America. You know, in Do America, they traveled all across America, you know? They went to the Grand Canyon and Vegas and DC and, you know, they did all kinds of cool stuff. In Do the Universe, outside of, you know, going to space and going through the time warp, they literally never even leave Texas. Once they fall out in a time warp, they fall out in Texas, and everything they do is relegated to Texas. They go to a prison, they go to college. Try not to spoil too much here, but they go to all these environments and they just never leave Texas. At least Do America, not that there aren't interesting set pieces, not that they don't find ways to get them into interesting places and interesting scenarios, but I don't, again, the lack of ambition, you know? And again, it's like instead of the Grand Canyon or like a glitzy Vegas casino, we're at places like a college campus or the beach. Or they go to prison, and the prison is just any other prison you've ever seen. It's not like a mega prison or anything cool. It's just, let's take them to a prison, take them to the beach, take them to I don't know. It's basically just a white trash vacation. Again, just the lack of ambition, the lack of stakes here just feels really... It's kind of sad, you know, because it doesn't feel... If this was meant as the name would suggest, a follow-up to Do America, man, the stakes are so much lower this time. It's hard to get too excited. It's... I don't know. It's maybe I'm doing the wrong thing and making the wrong comparison here, but the last movie was just so ambitious. I put on Beavis and Butthead Do America before watching this one, and man, if you do that, if you watch Do America right next to Does the Universe, yeah, man, it's gonna be just a giant step down, and you will notice it too. Again, hell, Beavis and Butthead Do America, it had like musical numbers and weird, you know, Rob Zombie had a weird fucking drug trip animation in there, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers have a video in it. It's like, man, Beavis and Butthead Do America just had so much going on, and this is just, yeah, not nearly that level of ambition. Maybe that was the biggest mistake I made here watching Beavis and Butthead Do America, but I mean... Can you blame me? I mean, overall, there's a lot to this movie that's kind of disappointing, particularly if you are invested in Beavis and Butthead, you know? If you remember the last big thing they did, then, For a Beavis and Butthead movie, it feels like it doesn't go for broke the way it needs to, you know? But... I don't know, those are more minor nitpicks coming from a fan. As a fan of Beavis and Butthead, I was let down by this. But the most important part of any Beavis and Butthead movie is it funny? Do the jokes land? Is the writing solid? Is it funny? Is it funny? Is it funny? And, you know, at the very least, I can give them that. The writing in this movie is still pretty decent. Again, I don't want this to spoil too much, but the But, the writing is still funny. It is still Beavis and Butthead. And even if nothing else about the world feels like it belongs there, Beavis and Butthead still feel like Beavis and Butthead, and they weren't necessarily tampered with. There are a lot of really, really funny moments in this movie. Again, I don't want to spoil them for you because, again, it's a comedy, and I don't want to just spoil the jokes, but certain moments that really got to me was like how they end up getting into space camp. How the sort of things that eventually get them into space is really funny in just like the stupidest kind of way. The relationship that Beavis gets into, again, I'm not going to say more than that, but like it's so funny. The arc of that relationship is, I like how it starts and I love how it ends, particularly like the last 15 minutes. The last 15 minutes of this movie, there's a big chase sequence and I'm not spoiling too much by telling you that, but there's this whole big hullabaloo, and like when it comes to a conclusion, I feel like the movie ends very, very solidly. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but the last scene in particular, I was just laughing my ass off. It was just so funny. I will give credit where it's due. Still funny. Still plenty of jokes that land. The only thing I would argue that didn't really hit was the one time they bring out Cornholio. Again, I just feel like, it speaks to the whole lower stakes thing. In Beavis and Butthead Do America, spoiler alert, I guess, they bring out Cornholio in the White House. TP for my bunghole with world leaders. The moment where they bring out Cornholio in this movie, again, it just kind of happens. It makes sense why it happens. And it's not like a bad scene necessarily, but they didn't really do much with it. I wasn't as impressed. And that scene in particular is really contrived. It's one of the moments where the writing really doesn't work. The prison in general just kind of really, I don't know. Some folks might get a kick out of that. It's part of a little running gag, but that sort of meets its climax. But I wasn't impressed. I don't know. That was the only part of the writing I can really remember being like, oh, I'm not okay, whatever. But everything else, fine. It's solid. It lands. It does what it needs to do. And overall, it's still basically funny. I wouldn't say this is like going to be anyone's movie of the year necessarily, but it's solid. It is a decent, passable 7 out of 10 kind of movie. It's a nice little dumb comedy to throw on in the background while you're doing something else, or, just put it on. It's fine for what it is, and it has its moments where it is genuinely kind of gut-bustingly funny, but it's not anything. Like, I actually got a subscription to Paramount Plus just to check this out, and like, I wouldn't recommend you do that, even for the $5 model. It's like, I don't know, man. If you can like rent it for cheaper, I'd do something like that. Unless you're a big Beavis and Butthead fan, it's probably not going to be something. I'd recommend you check out Beavis and Butthead Do America. Honestly, that is the way better movie. Or even just check out some of the Beavis and Butthead TV shows. Like, it's not bad, but this is kind of lower on the Beavis and Butthead kind of echelon. It's what I would compare this to, actually, are the Futurama direct-to-DVD movies. Do you remember those from like around the early 2000s when they were trying to reboot Futurama? It feels like that. It feels like kind of a lower budget, kind of a lower ambition and scale kind of thing to sort of help create buzz for a future potential project, to kind of potentially lead into a new Beavis and Butthead series, which, if I'm being honest, if that's the goal behind this movie, I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Again, the writing is still there. Beavis and Butthead are still funny, and there are ways you can make them work even in a modern setting. I wouldn't say this necessarily sold me on it. The thing is, I'm not going to rush out to renew my Paramount Plus subscription when they do announce that. But it didn't like turn me off to it. It didn't say, oh, they're going to reboot the series. Oh, that's going to be terrible. It's just like, okay, it's fine. And if they want to do it again, it might be okay. But I don't have much more than that. I don't have much more for this movie than okay. You know, and again, maybe that's just my fans' perspective. Maybe I'm just tainted because I know Beavis and Butthead's other stuff, and so much of their other stuff is so much better than this, but it's fine, is the thing. I sound disappointed, but it's fine. Again, like I said, solid 7 out of 10 comedy. You know, you might get a few yucks out of it. There's certainly way worse you can do out there, especially on Paramount Plus, you know, but I was wanting to be more hyped for this, but it's a little bit of a letdown, and I'm not excited for more Beavis and Butthead if that's the idea behind this, which I don't know. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, I kind of wanted to throw something out there. I know my next video is kind of late, and the live stream I said we were going to do is also late. I don't know, y'all. When have I ever met a deadline? They're on the way. I'm in final edits with the Dark Souls video as we speak. Hopefully I'll get that done sometime here in July. I'll let you know when our next big live stream is going to happen. That'll be coming up. I'd like to get that done by July too, but we'll just see how the cards fall. And I will show y'all the new set once we have it all set up and everything. And I will be in touch. See you when I see you.